Ladies and gentlemen, listen closely to this truth. My life won't change unless I do, not tomorrow, not next year, not when conditions improve, not when somebody else behaves better, not when luck finally shows up. Your life changes the moment you change. Change always begins with you, not with the world around you, not with other people, and not with circumstances you cannot control. Most people spend their lives waiting for something outside themselves to shift before they give themselves permission to become better, happier, stronger, or more fulfilled. They wait for the perfect moment, the right opportunity, the right relationship, or the right amount of money before they decide to improve their life. But the truth is, waiting only delays transformation because life does not respond to wishes, it responds to decisions. Until you make a conscious choice to think differently, act differently, and expect differently, your environment will simply continue to mirror who you are being right now. The world is not designed to shape you, you are designed to shape your world. Every change you've ever seen in people who succeeded did not start with better conditions, but with a better commitment to themselves. You do not rise when life becomes easy. Life becomes easier when you rise. The moment you accept that you are responsible for what happens next, you take your power back from excuses, from fear, and from the past. And power is not about control over others, it is about control over your own thinking, reactions, and direction. You might not have chosen where you started, but you do choose where you go from here. You may not be able to rewrite yesterday, but you can write tomorrow with what you decide today. The greatest misunderstanding people have is believing that change requires something new to appear in their life, when in reality, change requires something old to disappear from their mindset. Old beliefs, old habits, old fears, old stories, these are the chains holding people in the same place year after year. When you decide to release them, life has no choice but to respond differently. The outside world must rearrange itself when the inside world changes first. You don't change because you feel ready, you change because you decide to become ready. Readiness comes after the decision, not before it. The shift begins when you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What can I do about it?" That single change in perspective separates those who remain stuck from those who break free. Responsibility is not a burden, it is freedom, because it means you are no longer helpless. It means you no longer have to wait for permission to improve your life. The future is not something you enter, it is something you create, and you create it by who you choose to be today. Your thoughts quietly shape your reality long before you see any results in your outer life. Every action you take begins as a thought, every emotion you feel is first created by an idea, and every result you experience is born from beliefs you may not even be aware you carry. Most people assume life is happening to them, when in truth, life is responding to the way they think about it. The mind is not just a place where ideas pass through. It is a factory that produces the experiences you live with every single day. When you repeatedly tell yourself a story about who you are and what is possible for you, that story becomes the lens through which you interpret everything. If you believe you are limited, life will appear limited. If you believe you are capable, life will present opportunities that match that belief. The tragedy is not that people fail, but that many never realize their thoughts were guiding them in a direction they never consciously chose. Worry trains the mind to expect problems, just as gratitude trains the mind to notice blessings. Fear teaches the brain to look for danger, just as confidence teaches the brain to look for growth. What you rehearse in your mind becomes what your nervous system accepts as normal. Over time, your body, emotions, and actions begin to obey the patterns you repeat in your thinking. This is why two people can stand in the same situation and have completely different outcomes. One sees a dead end, the other sees a doorway. One sees proof they are unlucky, the other sees a lesson preparing them for something greater. Reality itself has not changed, but their mental interpretation has, and that interpretation determines the result. If you continue thinking in the same way, you will continue living in the same way, no matter how much you claim to want more. Desire alone is powerless unless your thinking supports it. You cannot build a new life with an old mindset any more than you can build a strong house on a weak foundation. The words you speak to yourself every day matter more than the words anyone else has ever said to you, because they become your internal reality. Your mind listens to everything you say about yourself, and it believes you. When you say, "I can't," your brain looks for proof. When you say, "I can," your brain searches for possibilities. This is not wishful thinking, it is mental conditioning. The mind works like a garden. Whatever you plant and repeatedly water eventually grows, whether you intend it to or not. If you want different results in your life, you must become more disciplined about what you allow into your mind, because thoughts are not innocent. They are instructions. When you change your inner dialogue, you change the direction of your life. Most people live their lives in a quiet postponement, always believing that the real beginning will come tomorrow, next month, or next year. They treat today like a waiting room instead of the doorway to their future. The idea of someday feels comforting because it allows dreams to exist without requiring courage, effort, or responsibility. It gives you permission to delay and still feel hopeful at the same time. But the danger of someday is that it slowly turns into never if it is not challenged by action. Life does not reward intention, it rewards movement. You can plan forever, imagine endlessly, and prepare constantly, but until you take a step, nothing actually changes. The future is not built by dreams alone, but by decisions made in ordinary moments. The problem with waiting is not that you waste time, it is that you waste yourself. You waste your potential, your energy, and your best ideas by locking them in a future that never officially arrives. There will never be a perfect moment when fear disappears, conditions align, and confidence magically appears. Those things come after you act, not before. Action creates clarity, not the other way around. You do not become confident and then take a step. You take a step and then confidence grows because you prove something to yourself. Every time you delay, you silently train your mind to believe that comfort is more important than growth. Over time, that habit becomes your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who waits rather than someone who moves. And the more you attach yourself to waiting, the harder it becomes to change because delay slowly erodes belief in your own power. The truth is, starting is never as dramatic as you imagine. It is often quiet, uncomfortable, and imperfect, but it is powerful because it breaks the spell of hesitation. The moment you begin, life responds differently. Doors appear where walls once stood simply because you decided to move instead of remain still. Momentum is created not by thinking about change, but by doing something, anything, in the direction of your dream. You do not need to see the entire path to take the first step. You only need the courage to act despite uncertainty. Waiting for readiness is like waiting for dawn while refusing to open your eyes. Readiness is not a gift that arrives, it is a choice you make. Each small action builds strength, each attempt builds belief, and each failure builds wisdom. The only real mistake is inaction, because it guarantees that nothing new can enter your life. The present moment is not just time passing, it is opportunity passing, and once it moves, you cannot reclaim it. Tomorrow does not owe you anything, but today is offering you everything if you are brave enough to accept it. Taking responsibility for your life is the moment you stop living as a victim of circumstances and start living as the authority over your own future. Blame feels easy because it temporarily protects you from discomfort, but it also quietly steals your power. Every time you point your finger outward, you remove your ability to change anything inward. When you blame your past, other people, or situations, you hand your control over to forces that cannot create the future you want. Responsibility, on the other hand, gives you something far more valuable than comfort. It gives you freedom. Freedom to choose differently, to think differently, and to act differently. Many people confuse responsibility with guilt or pressure, but responsibility is not about punishing yourself for what went wrong. It is about empowering yourself to make what comes next right. You may not be responsible for everything that has happened to you, but you are responsible for whatever happens from this moment forward. The moment you accept this truth, the role of victim disappears and the role of creator begins. Blame keeps you locked in the past. Responsibility pulls you into possibility. Blame focuses on what you lost. Responsibility focuses on what you can build. Blame asks who is at fault. Responsibility asks what can be done. One weakens you, the other strengthens you. People who grow do not waste time rehearsing the unfairness of life. They commit their energy to redesigning it. They understand that complaining does not create change, but decision does. When you own your life, you stop waiting for permission to become better. You do not look for excuses to stay small, you look for reasons to expand. Responsibility forces you into honesty, and honesty forces you into growth. It makes you confront bad habits instead of defending them. It makes you replace old patterns instead of explaining them. It teaches you that while you cannot rewrite your history, you can absolutely rewrite your direction. The most powerful shift you will ever make is to say, "This is my life, and I choose what happens next." That one sentence removes every chain you placed on yourself through excuses, resentment, and fear. Responsibility does not mean you must carry everything alone. It means you no longer pretend someone else should carry it for you. When you accept responsibility, you stop being impressed by reasons and start being committed to results. You stop living in reaction and start living in intention, and in that shift, power returns to you quietly but completely, because the moment you stop blaming, you stop being weak, and the moment you stop being weak, you start becoming unstoppable. Excuses are comforting stories people tell themselves to avoid the discomfort of change, but those same stories quietly build the cage that keeps them stuck. It feels safer to explain why something cannot be done than to risk discovering that you were capable all along. Excuses protect your ego from failure, but they also protect your limitations from being challenged. When you choose comfort over growth, you slowly trade possibility for predictability, and your life becomes small not by force, but by habit. Dreams, on the other hand, do not care about your comfort. They ask for courage, discipline, and persistence. A dream will disturb you before it ever rewards you, because it must stretch you into someone you have never been before. This is why so many people admire other people's success, but secretly fear their own potential. It is easier to consume inspiration than to become responsible for transformation. Excuses say, "I would if I could," while commitment says, "I will even if it's hard." And life responds very differently to those two attitudes. You can tell how committed someone is by how they act when things are inconvenient. Anyone can feel motivated when conditions are perfect, but destiny is shaped in moments when effort feels heavy and results feel far away. Excuses show up strongest when you are closest to change. Fear grows louder when you are on the edge of something new, because your old identity senses it is about to disappear. Excuses are nothing more than fear dressed in polite clothing. They come in reasonable forms, logical explanations, and convincing justifications, but they all lead to the same outcome, staying the same. Commitment does not mean you feel confident every day. It means you move even on days when you do not. It is a quiet promise you make to yourself that you will not turn back the moment things become uncertain. There is no magic in success, but there is consistency. There is no secret code, but there is discipline. People who live extraordinary lives are not extraordinary people. They are people who refuse to negotiate with their own excuses. They show up even when it is uncomfortable. They continue even when it is slow. They believe even when nothing seems to confirm their faith. A dream must become more important to you than your fear if it is ever going to become real. The moment your vision becomes stronger than your excuses, something inside you shifts and your behavior follows. Excuses keep you busy, but commitment makes you different. One creates motion, the other creates transformation, and in that difference your future is decided. Fear often arrives in your life disguised as logic, warning you about what might go wrong, what you could lose, or how you might fail, but its true purpose is always the same, to keep you from moving forward. It does not shout, it whispers, and because it sounds reasonable, many people accept it as truth. Fear convinces you to wait, to settle, to play small, not because you are incapable, but because it feeds on the unknown. Anything new threatens the familiar version of you, and fear's job is to preserve what is familiar, even if what is familiar is painful. But within every human being exists another voice, quieter yet stronger, that speaks of possibility instead of danger. That voice is faith, and it does not promise ease, it promises growth. Faith does not show you the entire path, it simply invites you to take the next step without guarantees. Fear says, what if it fails? Faith asks, what if it works? Fear pictures humiliation, loss, and regret, while faith imagines development, discovery, and fulfillment. One focuses on survival, the other on purpose. When you allow fear to decide, your life shrinks to the size of your comfort zone. When you allow faith to lead, your life expands to the size of your courage. Faith does not eliminate fear, it overrules it. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision that something else matters more. You do not wake up one day suddenly fearless, you wake up willing to risk disappointment for the chance at something more meaningful, willing to be misunderstood for the sake of authenticity, willing to fail forward instead of standing still perfectly safe and deeply unfulfilled. Fear wants you to believe that safety is the highest goal, but peace is not found in hiding, it is found in becoming. Every time you choose faith over fear, you rewrite the limits of what is possible in your own mind. Your confidence does not come from thinking positive thoughts. It comes from surviving uncomfortable actions and realizing you are still standing. Faith grows through use. The more you act despite your fear, the weaker fear becomes and the stronger you become. Every courageous decision leaves evidence in your mind that you are capable of more than you believed. Over time, you stop asking if you can handle things and start trusting that you will. Fear loses its authority when faith gains experience. You were never meant to live a life governed by what might go wrong, but to be guided by what could go right. The life you want exists on the other side of the fear you keep avoiding, and the only way to reach it is to walk through uncertainty with belief as your guide and courage as your companion. Many people love the feeling of being inspired, but far fewer are willing to perform the actions that inspiration demands. Inspiration is easy to enjoy because it requires nothing from you except emotion, but action requires effort, risk, and persistence. You can listen to powerful words, watch moving videos, and feel awakened for a moment. But if that feeling does not lead to movement, nothing in your life will actually change. Inspiration without action is like admiring a map, but never starting the journey. You may know exactly where you want to go, but knowing is not the same as going. Action is what turns ideas into experiences. It is what transforms vision into reality. Without it, dreams remain decoration in the mind instead of living events in your life. The danger is that inspiration can become addictive. You chase motivational content the way others chase entertainment, always looking for the next emotional high, yet staying exactly where you are. This creates the illusion of growth without any measurable progress. You feel like you are moving because your emotions are stirred, but your life remains unchanged. Growth does not happen in the mind alone, it happens in behavior. A single small action is more powerful than 1,000 hopeful thoughts. Even imperfect action creates momentum, and momentum creates confidence. Waiting for the perfect plan, the perfect mood, or the perfect timing is just another form of delay disguised as preparation. You learn far more by doing something wrong than by doing nothing right. Action teaches you what books cannot, and experience reveals what thinking hides. Every step teaches you something that can only be learned through movement. Success is not built by intensity of feeling, but by consistency of effort. You do not need giant bursts of motivation. You need daily alignment between what you say you want and what you are willing to do. Action exposes your priorities better than your words ever could. If something matters to you truly, you will eventually act on it, not because it is easy, but because it becomes necessary. And if you are not acting, it is not because you are lazy. It is because something else feels more important in that moment, such as comfort, approval, or fear. When you act in spite of comfort, approval, and fear, you reclaim direction over your life. You stop being a spectator of other people's success and become involved in your own. Action substitutes wishing with building, dreaming with working, and hoping with doing. It simplifies life by removing doubt through experience. You begin to trust yourself not because you think you can do something, but because you have done something. In that shift, self-belief stops being an idea and becomes a result of proof you gave yourself through movement. Your habits are the silent architects of your destiny, quietly shaping your life day by day, long before you notice their effect. Every choice you make, no matter how small, is a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. Habits are not neutral. They either move you closer to your dreams or keep you tethered to stagnation. Many people underestimate their power because habits feel ordinary and routine. But it is precisely in the ordinary that greatness is built. Success is rarely a single, dramatic moment. It is the result of repeated actions, repeated behaviors, repeated decisions, all aligned toward a purpose. The way you spend your mornings, the words you speak to yourself, the energy you invest in your relationships, your work, and your self-care, all of these daily patterns compound into the life you experience. Ignoring them is like planting seeds in a garden and never watering them, then wondering why nothing grows. Some habits feel small, insignificant even, like choosing to read for 10 minutes, waking up early, or taking a short walk. Yet, the compound effect of small positive habits over weeks, months, and years is exponential. The same is true for negative habits. Procrastination, criticism, mindless scrolling, unhealthy eating. They accumulate silently and eventually dominate your life if left unchecked. Habits create your default mode, the way you respond when no one is watching, when the pressures of life mount, or when motivation wanes. They define your consistency, which is far more important than occasional bursts of effort. Transformation does not come from what you do once in a while, but from what you do consistently. That is why personal growth always begins with self-awareness, noticing what you repeatedly do, what you repeatedly think, and what you repeatedly allow. Awareness allows you to break old patterns and deliberately design new ones that serve your vision. The key is intentionality. When you act with purpose, your habits become your allies rather than your enemies. They carry you forward even when motivation falters, because they are ingrained in your routine. Your future self is literally built from the choices your present self makes every day. Every habit you reinforce, every routine you practice, and every decision you repeat is like adding bricks to the foundation of your life. You cannot create a completely new life without creating new habits first, because your habits determine the trajectory of your growth. Change is not about a single decision, it is about daily commitment. The life you want is not a distant dream, it is the natural outcome of the habits you consistently cultivate. Forgiveness is one of the most powerful acts you can perform, not for the sake of others, but for your own freedom. Holding on to resentment, anger, or regret is like carrying a heavy weight on your shoulders, constantly draining your energy and clouding your mind. Many people mistake forgiveness for weakness or for excusing wrongdoing, but true forgiveness is neither of those things. It is a conscious decision to release the grip of the past on your present and future. When you forgive, you stop allowing the actions of others, or even your own mistakes, to dictate your emotional state. You reclaim the power that has been stolen by blame, bitterness, or guilt. It is not about forgetting because memory remains, but about refusing to let that memory control your life. Forgiveness allows you to step out of the victim role and into the role of creator. It does not mean you must reconcile or continue a relationship with someone who has hurt you. It simply means you no longer carry their burden within you. The act of forgiving yourself is equally important. We all make mistakes, bad choices, and missteps along our journey, yet blame keeps us trapped in cycles of regret and inaction. By forgiving yourself, you acknowledge that you did the best you could with the knowledge and tools you had at the time, and you allow yourself to grow beyond those past limitations. Forgiveness creates space for peace to enter your life, because peace cannot coexist with resentment. It allows your mind to focus on solutions rather than grievances, on growth rather than punishment, and on love rather than fear. People who forgive are not naive. They are wise enough to understand that holding onto anger is a decision to remain in pain, and letting go is a decision to move toward healing. Every time you forgive, you break invisible chains that have held you back from living fully. You open yourself to new experiences, new relationships, and new opportunities without the heavy baggage of past grievances. Forgiveness is not a one-time act, but a continual practice, because life constantly presents challenges, disappointments, and conflict. The more you practice forgiveness, the more naturally it becomes a part of your character, and the lighter, freer, and more resilient you become. It is a form of self-love that empowers you to move forward without the weight of yesterday. In letting go of resentment, you create room for joy, clarity, and creativity to flourish. You cannot fully embrace your purpose, your potential, or your happiness while clinging to unforgiveness, because it acts like a shadow over every step you take. Choosing forgiveness is choosing liberation, choosing to live unburdened, choosing to reclaim your energy for what truly matters. Choice is the ultimate force that shapes your life because it transforms hope into reality and potential into action. Many people spend years waiting for circumstances to align, for opportunities to appear, or for luck to favor them. But the truth is that nothing changes until a conscious decision is made. Hope is passive. It wishes for a better future without requiring responsibility or action. Choice, on the other hand, is active. It demands courage, clarity, and commitment. Every significant change in your life begins with the moment you choose to act differently than you did yesterday. You choose how to respond to challenges, how to treat others, how to think about yourself, and how to invest your energy. Each choice is like a seed planted in the fertile ground of your life. It may start small and seem insignificant, but with consistent nurturing, it grows into a tree that shapes your entire reality. The power of choice is most evident in moments of difficulty. When circumstances are uncomfortable, when fear threatens, or when doubt creeps in, it is your choice that determines whether you remain stagnant or move forward. People often underestimate how much control they truly have because they focus on external factors instead of the internal decisions that ultimately guide every outcome. By taking responsibility for your choices, you reclaim authority over your life. You stop being a passenger and start being the driver, navigating toward your desired destination rather than being tossed around by the winds of circumstance. Choices also define your identity. Who you are is not only a reflection of your past, but a projection of the decisions you continue to make. Choosing growth over comfort, action over hesitation, and faith over fear slowly molds you into the person capable of achieving the life you envision. Even when outcomes are uncertain, the act of choosing empowers you because it shifts your focus from what you cannot control to what you can. Every choice creates momentum, every decision